All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar, Google Sheets for Educators. And while you wait for things to get started, please feel free to take the 4-question survey kind of in the middle to the right of your screen. If you're watching the archive, we will still receive your answers, so we would appreciate your feedback too. And before we begin, I do have a couple of housekeeping items that I want to go over. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets that you can use during the webinar and while watching the archive. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your question. You can also feel free to use the group chat icon as well. We will try to capture and answer all questions during the webcast, but if a fuller answer is needed or if we run out of time, we'll answer later via email. And again, we capture all questions, even those submitted if you're watching the archive. And if you're watching the live session, we encourage you to share ideas and ask your questions through the blue group chat widget. The idea sharing and resource and that old theory, when you ask a question, you're probably not the only one who's thinking it. So please feel free to use that group chat area. It has 2 little speech bubbles on it. And Michael will also be posting links and additional resources throughout the webinar in the group chat area. A copy of today's slides and additional information are available in the green resource list widget. It looks like a little folder at the bottom of your screen. You can expand the slide area by clicking on the maximize icon in the top right of the slide area or by dragging the bottom right corner of the slide area. You can minimize any of the widget areas by clicking the minimize icon in the top right corner of that window. If you have any technical difficulty, please click on the help widget. It has a question mark icon and covers common technical issues. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available approximately 1 day after the webinar and can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier. It looks like can't hear me. All right, I'm being told that you couldn't hear me. Can people hear me now? Can you hear me now? Awesome. Thanks, Allison, for sharing in the group chat. Looks like people can hear me now. Thank you so much, guys. All right, well, I'm going to get started because I've just been talking to myself for a minute. So I will start over. Thank you so much for joining us for Google Sheets for Educators. While you wait, please feel free to take that 4-question survey. It's kind of in the middle to the right of your screen. If you're watching the archive, we will still capture responses from you as well. So please feel free to submit that feedback. A couple of housekeeping things. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets that you can feel free to use throughout the webinar and while watching the archive. If you have any questions at all during the webcast, you can click on that Q&A widget at the bottom to submit your question. We'll try to answer these as best we can during the webinar, but if a fuller answer is needed or if we run out of time, we'll answer later via email. That includes those folks watching the archive as well. If you're watching the live session, we encourage you to share ideas or ask questions. So sorry, guys. I'm getting a handful of people saying that they still don't have sound. It looks like half of you do. Half of you do not. Everything looks okay on my end. Give me just a second to try to troubleshoot this here with a couple of people. I wonder if anyone's having trouble, try to refresh the page. You may have to sign back in, but I wonder if that will refresh it for you. Oh, good. So it looks like it's just a couple of folks having the issue. Give us just one more minute. If we can't get it solved for everybody, I'd like to try as best we can. But if we can't, since it looks like about half of you are giving me feedback that you can hear me, I'll keep going. But give us just one more minute. We'll still cover everything to see if we can get everybody in here. Awesome. So it looks like that fixed it for some people, refreshing the page. Excellent. Thanks, guys. So sorry about that mix up. So I'll kind of fly through the rest of my little housekeeping items here. Use the Q&A if you have any trouble. Also, please use the group chat widget. It has two little speech bubbles on it. That always makes the webinar more interesting, and you guys are already using it to give me some feedback about the sound. So keep sharing ideas and resources there. That makes these experiences more meaningful for everyone when we can share. A copy of today's slides, and this will be really important. I also have an example spreadsheet for you in the resources widget. It's a little green icon. It looks like a folder in the bottom of your screen. So today's slides that I'm going to run through, and a copy of the example spreadsheet, different things that I'm going to talk about as we go through. You can kind of play as we go along, is in that resources widget. It's also, I know there's some folks who are grouped together in one room who are tuning in. If you guys go to our actually the slideshow, I forgot where I put the link at this point. But if you open up the slideshow, I also have the link in there for you. So each person should be able to get to it as well. And if you are in a group, you can get to the slideshow link on Forward Edge webinar page. That's forward-edge.net/webinars. And Michael will share the link with you in the group chat too. You can expand the slide area if you need to make it bigger by clicking on the maximize icon in the top right, or by dragging the bottom right corner of the slide area. And you can minimize any of those widgets if they start to get in your way by clicking that minimize icon in the top right corner of that particular window. An on-demand version will be available approximately one day after today, and you can access it using the same audience link that you used to join the webinar today. Feel free to share what you're learning on Twitter with the hashtag FEK12. You should be seeing that on your screen right now on the slides. And so we will go ahead and get started without further ado. So my name is Katie Seamer. I am the Director of Curriculum and Technology Integration at Forward Edge. And we also have Michael Roush, who is our amazing Technology Integration Specialist. So we will be here for you today answering questions and hopefully sharing something new with you. So who is Forward Edge? We are a K-12 technology company, and when I say that, I mean that we do all things technology for schools, including selling hardware, setting up and managing wireless networks, and we even have our own cabling team that will pull and run cables to hang APs and move projectors and all kinds of stuff. And so about 2 years ago, we began to focus pretty heavily on the curriculum and integration side. So once you have that technology, what exactly do you do with it? So Michael and I work much more on the curriculum side of things. We have an education background and classroom experience, and in short, we offer visioning and planning services, provide PD, and serve as on-site integration coaches to some schools. So what do we have in store today? We're going to talk about Google Sheets, some spreadsheet terminology, some different formatting tips for you, how to sort and filter your data, We'll talk a little bit about formulas, how you can visualize and analyze with charts. We'll talk about at least one handy add-on, and then how you can share and protect your data. So at this point if you have the Google Slides up in front of you, in the little notes area of slide 4 is where the link to the practice spreadsheet will be if you don't have the audience console right in front of you. So before we get started, I'd love to get a little bit of feedback from folks about how much experience you have with Google Sheets. And I've got some comparisons because I know a lot of people come at it with experience with Excel, but maybe not Google Sheets. So I've kind of got some comparisons. So we'll take 10, 15 more seconds for everyone to answer. And go ahead and submit if you haven't yet. And let's see kind of where everyone is at. Okay, good. So a little bit across the board. So I think everybody's going to get something out of today. And it looks like most people are coming in with a little bit of experience with Excel and or Google Sheets. Awesome. So what are Google Sheets and why would you need to use them? Well, they are Google's version of Excel or a spreadsheet program. Just like a Google Doc, you can collaborate real time with up to 50 other people in a Google spreadsheet. So for any sort of building level or across teams, makes it really nice to put all of your audio and all of your data in one spot. You'll also know, if you're familiar with Google Forms, that the responses are stored in a Google spreadsheet. So it puts the data out there really nicely for you, nice, neat, and organized for any sort of analyzation that you might need to do. If you don't know, you've never opened up a Google Sheet before, you can create a new Google Sheet. Okay, guys, did that work? Can people hear me now? Okay, good. I am so sorry. I actually got stuck at a school and wasn't able to go back to my office. So I wonder if that's the problem. I do apologize. Let me get back to where we were. But good. We'll keep moving. Glitches happen, right? Okay. So educational uses. I do think that most people have a progress book or some other grade book. However, if you don't, Google Sheets could very easily be used to create a grade book for yourself. Any sort of a sign-up sheet that you may need to do, whether it's with students, other teachers, staff members, works perfectly for that. Creating rosters, and actually, what I suggest for teachers to do is to actually create a Google form which asks to collect all of the information that you'd like to have in your roster, because then you can have a student roster or parent contact information all in a nice, neat spreadsheet for you, because like we just talked about, answers to a Google Sheet go into a spreadsheet. Answers from a Google form go into a spreadsheet. Gets to be a tongue twister. Tracking anything, any sort of progress, any information, analyzing any kind of data. So thinking about your students in your classroom with their grades, your TBTs, your BLTs, your DLTs, all the alphabet soup. Any sort of project management. If you need to keep track of dates, due dates, your progress, who's in charge of what, for the responsibility. Google Sheets is so nice for that because you can have everyone who's involved in the project contributing and updating their status. On the right side, I've got student geared ways to incorporate Google Sheets into the classroom. So I've seen a lot of teachers have students use Google Sheets to chart their own progress or effort or grades. Great way to do that. Students can input information and create graphs out of it. I have teachers who will create a Google form to collect lab data or information, and then they'll give the whole class access to the spreadsheet of results, and then students can analyze, make predictions, inferences on that data based on the whole class or whole grade results instead of just their own or their own small group. And then, of course, Eric Kurtz, we're actually so lucky to have him in Ohio. And he makes amazing resources for Google. So if you haven't checked him out, check out Eric Kurtz. His blog is Control Alt Achieve. But he actually has a handful of great ideas for using Google Sheets with your students, including a link that I added on slide 7 there for you to use Google Sheets as a writing prompt generator. So tons of great ideas. Another quick little poll, just so I can maybe kind of help focus me here. A lot of teachers, when I talk to them, get really overwhelmed with Google Sheets. So I'm just curious, what overwhelms you the most? And maybe it's nothing, and that's fine. Or maybe it's everything, and that is perfectly fine too. So go ahead and you can select multiple things here. And go ahead and wrap up and submit if you haven't yet. And let's see. Okay, good. So we've got some people not intimidated, just as many people that are feeling like it's really intimidating. Awesome. And formula seems to be the most kind of overwhelming thing. All right, so talking just a couple of quick things that I want to get out of the way to make sure we're all on the same page. And for your example spreadsheet, if you have it up, this would actually be the first tab that you have on that example spreadsheet, or the first sheet down at the bottom. So talking some terminology, we have our header row. As you can see there, that's where the titles for each of your columns. Rows, of course, are horizontal and are marked by numbers all the way on the left there. Columns are vertical, and they are marked by letters up at the top. We have filters and we're going to talk about filters in a minute, but filters actually are super helpful when you're trying to sort through your data. There are formulas, which I've got some numbers down on the side. It looks like I think it's A19 through 20 something. And I've got numbers, and then I've got my little sum formula there in G15. It's got the blue box around it. And so what that is doing, I put the formula below so you could see, and so that is adding up all of those numbers for me. So I don't have to manually do that math. And then, of course, this is one of multiple sheets or pages. You can see at the very, very bottom there, it says Sheet 1, Sheet 2. If you have that example spreadsheet up, you would see terminology, student data, motion charts. I forget exactly what I named it now, but you should see multiple tabs or sheets to that entire workbook. So some quick formatting tips. A lot of the times when Michael and I work with teachers, we see them struggling to do some easy things with just some basic formatting information. So you can actually format your cells by the type of data that you want to input. And so to do that, you would just want to select your data, the rows or the columns, and then you can go up to Format at the top. In the first option, and feel free to do this along with me in another tab or window as I talk you through it. But then a number, that first option, then there's all the different ways that you can format your data. There's also this handy, some commonly used formatting types right there in the toolbar for you. They're outlined in red here. So if we take a little closer look at those, we have some numbers here. You can do numbers. We can do currency. You can do time. You can do plain text if it's not, numbers, and that makes it really nice. It's not a huge deal. When you're going to want to format your data, sometimes you'll notice that when you start to get into formulas or using add-ons, sometimes it's not giving you the results that you think it should be giving you. And a lot of times the first thing I'll check, if that's the case, is to make sure that I have formatted my data correctly. So to make sure that, if I want some sort of adding or some sort of mathematical equation in my formula, if it's not giving me the right response, I probably haven't formatted that data as a number or as currency correctly, so on and so forth. So again, not a huge deal, but you could potentially run into problems if you don't format the data correctly when you start using formulas. You'll also notice, and sorry I skimmed past it just a little bit, with any sort of decimals, percent, anything like that, and that quick little formatting toolbar that's right there, where you see the decimal in the single zero with an arrow pointing to the left, or the decimal and then 2 zeros with the arrow pointing to the right, that will increase or decrease the decimal places that you will see in with whatever that formatting is there for you. You can also, I also see a lot of people that don't know how to do this. You can select an entire row by clicking the number to the left of that row. You can also select multiple rows by clicking and dragging on the actual numbers all the way to the left where I have that arrow pointing to the 4. Same thing with to highlight an entire column. If you click the letter at the very top, so right here I've got H selected. If I click H, it will highlight the entire column H. Same thing, if I would click on H and drag it over to K, it would highlight H through K and all columns in between at the same time. Another quick little tip for you, if I would select, let's say, A2, you can do Control if you are on a PC or a Chromebook, or Command if you're on a Mac, plus Shift, and then use your arrow keys, and then it will select all of the cells in between that have data in them. So if I clicked in A2 and did Control Shift down, it would go and highlight everything in column A through 26, where that last little bit of data is that you see there. So just another quick tip. Another handy, really fast tip for expanding the width of your columns. Sometimes what you're typing goes beyond the default column width there. If you click it right in between the letters of the column, so where I've got it zoomed in there for you, it looks blue, and then there's a teeny little black arrow, you can click and drag that back and forth to resize. Or if you give that a quick double click right there, that will automatically expand your column to the exact width that is needed for whatever the biggest cell in that column is. So you can see here in that first little image to the left where it says total points possible, my possible is actually cut off, so I can't read it all the way. If I just give it a quick double click, then it automatically expands like my image in the right so that I can read the entire contents of that column. So now I can read my full total points possible. Another thing, you can actually wrap the text to make things easier to read in a spreadsheet. So lots of folks that are using Google Forms now to collect assessments. I actually got asked this question this morning by someone who did this exact same thing. So you use Google Forms, it collects the data, it puts it all in a spreadsheet, which is awesome. But sometimes when you've got these extended responses, it's really hard to read in a spreadsheet format. So if you just wrap the text, all you have to do is select your column. So again, click that letter so it selects the whole column. And then if we go up to our toolbar I've got it kind of zoomed in and selected there for you. It looks like two lines, which kind of signify your column, and the default will be an arrow that goes past the right line. If you click that drop down and then select the middle icon that has an arrow that instead loops around, that will actually wrap the text. So you see now my column H, all of the text that one person submitted isn't going on and on and on a single line. It's actually wrapping around so I can read it more like a paragraph within an individual cell. So wrap text is going to be really important, especially for those of you who are collecting extended responses in a Google Sheet. You can also, a lot of people, and for those of you who said that you're pretty good with Excel but don't have as much experience with Google Sheets, you're going to like this. You can actually format your data to have alternating colors. So if you go up to Format and then just down to Alternating Colors, you can then choose, do you have a header and a footer? And then choose what color you want it to be. And you can customize it a little bit more. I usually just select one of those presets there for myself. So again, just go up to Format, select Alternating Colors, and then you can choose or customize from the presets there. And then just hit Done at the bottom when you're finished. And that color panel will show up on that right-hand side of your spreadsheet when you open it up. So it makes it a little bit easier to read lots and lots of data. Conditional formatting. This is super handy, especially if you're going to use it for any sort of grade analyzation to actually, it can make certain grades, failing grades, passing grades, whatever, stand out much faster to you. And so to do that, if you highlight the data, so if you are on the student data tab of your example spreadsheet, you'll actually have this and you can actually see it and play around with my settings too, or you can add this if you want. But so all I did was click the letter J, so it highlighted my entire growth column. And what I was trying to do here is in one quick glance, I want to see green for students who did have growth, and red for students who either had no growth, they got the same score on their pre and post assessment, or they actually did worse on the post assessment than the pre-assessment. So I highlight my data, I come up to Format in my toolbar, and then I select Conditional Formatting. And then over on the right, you'll see it saying Apply to Range, and it's got all my J data there. And then I can say Format Cells If. And you can do this for more than just numbers. You can do this for particular words. You can do this for anything. But so what I said was Format Cells If they are less than or equal to 0. And then I told it how to format them. So give it this red background. And then for the same set of data, I did it a second time, but I said Format Cells if they are greater than 0, and then format them green. So all kinds of things that you can play around with conditional formatting. I love using it because it's just such a fast way if you want anything, words, data, numbers, percent to stand out to you, you can do that with this color coding. All right, so we can also, those Excel users, you're going to like this too. I see a lot of sheets converters that don't realize you can do this. You can freeze your header row or columns. So again, let's say that you're going through data, or maybe you used a Google form to collect information. You can actually freeze that header row so you can see which question is this that you're reading as you scroll down, down, down. So all you have to do is go up to, and I've got a little image here showing you how to do it. But if you just go up to the Data tab, then you should see Freeze. And then you should be able to select either View, not Data, View, Freeze, And then to freeze our header row, we would select one row. You could also select columns. So if this was some sort of roster and the first question was student names, maybe you want to freeze that first column that has their name in it. So as you're scrolling over to the right to look at the information, you'll know whose it is. But so that works with rows and columns there. So view, freeze, and then you select exactly what you want to freeze. Sorting and filtering the data. So this is why it becomes important to have information like this in a spreadsheet instead of just maybe a Google Doc, because you can actually sort and filter and get to what you need. So to sort the data, let's say here in this example, I want to sort my data by students' last names, so they show in alphabetical order for me. What I always make sure to do is freeze my header row first. We just talked about that. View, freeze, row 1. And then if I click that little arrow there that's in my column header, I can say sort sheet A to Z. If they were numbers, it would still say A to Z, but then it would just sort from least to greatest. And then, so long as you've made sure to freeze that header row, it won't sort and filter that header row in with the data. I see that happen to a lot of folks. So just freeze that first row first, then you can actually go in, click the little arrow or right click, sort sheet A to Z. And here you can see afterwards. So on my first view, it starts with last name Minnie Mouse, Mickey Mouse. Once I sort it, now we're starting with Baloo the Bear, Sleeping Beauty, so on and so forth. Nice in alphabetical order. And that will also sort everything else in that row. And see, you can tell because all of my names make sense, right? Daisy Duck, Donald Duck, Scooby-Doo, so on and so forth. So it will, I get that question a lot about Google Sheets, and it will, just like you can do in Excel, sort the entire row along with that column. So filtering the data. Take just a second to load my little image here for you, but you can actually filter the data. And if you do this, I think the best way to kind of understand, if you pull up that example spreadsheet that you have and go to that student data tab where it's got all the pre and post scores, you can turn on the filter icon, and then you're actually able to filter by information. So what I do, once this finishes loading here, this little image for you, what you can do is actually, so let's say that I'm trying to understand how my students with an IEP did on the test. I can actually filter out to just look at that column that asks if students have an IEP. I can filter that out to just say students with IEP, yes or no. Or by demographic information. Anything at all, we can actually do that. So here, if it's taking a second to load, I'll actually just pull it up for you and show it to you. Okay, so let me show you how we can do this. So right here, I will select my column. If I come up here to my filter icon, it'll turn on that filter. And then when I click that little filter icon there, I'll hit clear. And let's see, I want to see how my African American students are doing. So I can filter it out. And now it will just show me all of my students with that information. And then what I can do is actually come over here. Select that, and it might, I don't think it's getting it in. Let me minimize this so you can see it. If I select all of this information after I've filtered it, all the way down here in the bottom right, you'll see sum 30%. But I can click and I can actually, it shows me really fast, I want to see the average. So the average growth of my African American students is 8% growth rate. Or I could see their average score. Let's see, their average score here was an 85%. So filtering is super handy to quickly see lots of information. So again, it's just this filter icon up here. I want to be clicked in the right spot first. And then you can go through and filter out individual data there. All right, so formulas, we talked about that. And that's where most of you said that you feel a little intimidated by formulas. And formulas are really what, well, aside from the sorting and the filtering, formulas are really what make the magic happen in your spreadsheet. So to create a formula, you start with the equal sign, and then you type the name of your formula. You can reference other cells by either typing them, so for instance A2, B3, or when after you've hit that equal sign, you can actually just click on a cell that you want to reference. And be careful when you're doing that, because once you type that equal sign, if you click anywhere at all, it will think that you're trying to reference that cell in your formula. So just be careful. For those of you who, and I'll show you a couple of examples of formulas in just a second, but for those of you who do feel really overwhelmed with formulas, Sheets actually has this incredibly handy new tool, relatively new. It's called Explore. It'll be at the very, very bottom right of your spreadsheet, and I've got the image there for you of what it looks like until you hover over it. When you open that up, it expands this green box. And you can actually, just in normal English, there's a little bit of a trick to it, but just in normal English, you can ask questions about your data and get information. So you don't really even need to know formulas now to get fast information about your data. So my example here, I typed average growth of IEP yes versus IEP no. So you do have to use information like column headers, data that shows up within your spreadsheet, things like that for it to work correctly. So it takes just a couple of times of practicing how to ask the questions correctly so it can know what you're asking. But right there, it showed me that my average growth of my students with and without an IEP right there. So I can see that. I don't have to know any fancy formulas. I don't even have to do any filtering. It tells me right there just by using Explore and then typing that in the question box. As an FYI, Explore will also suggest charts and formatting, like with alternating colors for you too. So you can actually copy a formula down by clicking on the, when you click on a cell, you should notice that there's a bigger blue box in the bottom right corner of that cell. And so when you hover over that box, you'll get the little crosshairs like you're seeing now. And you can actually just click and drag the formula down, or a double click will expand that formula all the way down for any row that you have additional data into. I apologize, these little quick video clips are loading kind of slow, but the Google slideshow will have all the clips in here for you, actually showing it and demoing it for you. If anyone needs to see anything though, just throw it in the group chat and I'm happy to pull it up for you and show you. Some formulas that you might want to know if you don't want to use the Explore are the sum formula, which will add a range of cells, the average formula, which would give you the average of a range of cells, the count A, there's also just a count, Count A will actually give you the number of values if it's text data. So if you're trying to figure out, how many people filled out the survey or how many people responded with this particular answer, you could use that formula and it would give you a quick count to say you had 15 people respond that they want apples. Concatenate, and I'm going to show you an example of what this actually does on the next slide. You also have a formulas tab in your example spreadsheet that shows a demo of each of these formulas for you. Concatenate combines text together into one cell. So for instance, if you need email addresses of all of your students and you know that it's their first name dot last name at your school dot edu, you can use the concatenate to quickly put all of their emails out there for you. The split does the opposite. So it would actually separate the text. So if you have a list of all of your students' email addresses, but you need to get rid of the at yourschool.edu and you just need their username, you could actually use this formula to split it at the at sign, so then you're just left with their username. The if formula returns a value if one thing is true and if another thing is false. I think that'll be better explained on the example on the next page. And then you can also just do basic math. So if you wanted to say, A2 multiplied by B2, so on and so forth, all you have to do is reference those cells. So here's the example of what I mean. So for instance, if you look at column H, and if you have it up in your example spreadsheet, it's column H. That if formula, what I did was tell it to look at E2. So what's their class average? If cell E2 is above a 70, then it should enter the words passed. If not, it should enter the word fail. So I can really quickly see who's passing, who's failing. The concatenate example is column F. So you can see here that it's taking what's in A2, putting a period, then what's in B2, and then I'm throwing in at fewebinar.net. So it takes that and it does it for every single student. So I'm not hand typing every single student's email address. And then the reverse, the split formula is in G, and it's saying take F2, or my email address, and split it at the at sign. So all I'm left with is their username. So just some examples of some formulas that are super handy that I don't see a lot of people knowing how to do. And it definitely takes some practice trying it out, but that's why I wanted you to have the spreadsheet so you can have an example in front of you and then you can play to get comfortable with it. All right, now we're going to talk visualizing and analyzing the data. So charts, I see a lot of people who use Excel and they say that they don't like Google Sheets because they use charts or pivot tables and so on and so forth. I will tell you that Google Sheets are getting better and better about all of this. When I was a Office convert to Google, Excel was the one thing that I found myself often having to go back to. But now I think there's one really advanced thing with pivot tables and advanced charts that I have to do in Excel. But otherwise, and it's pretty advanced. But otherwise, I don't ever use Excel anymore either. I'm full Google all the way. So here's a little example, and you have this example too in your example spreadsheet. It should be a little tab at the bottom. It's either called motion or charts or something like that, so you can actually play with it and see it. And so when the data is changed in your in your spreadsheet, it's actually reflected in that chart. So let me do a screen share with you real quick since this little image isn't loading again. And I'll show you. Here we go. So first of all, to enter a chart, let me get rid of this one so I can show you. So to insert a chart, all I do is select my data. I'm going to come up to Insert, Chart. And it's going to give you some predictions based on the data, what it thinks you want to do. However, these predictions aren't what I want to do. So I'm going to flip over to chart types, and I want it to be a line graph. For this particular example, actually a 6th grade science class is doing for a motion lab. And so the way that I want to explain it, I'm going to aggregate column A, so I only have one line to represent my distance. Then the customization tab, that's where you can actually go to add different axes, change the colors, change your key, all of that good stuff. So here I've got my chart, and then it updates in live time. So if I would add, let's say 11 and 20, you can see my chart changes immediately. Let's delete them. There, we're back to how it was originally. So charts are super, super easy to insert and manipulate. They make it really nice to view the information. And with this particular example, students were actually charting their own lab findings from this motion lab and inserting the chart themselves instead of just drawing it on paper. That way, the teacher can talk about, well, what if we did this or what if we did this? And they enter it and see how it would affect, and they're able to visualize it much better. Another really cool thing that you can do with Google Sheets charts, if I click on that chart and come up here to my little arrow, I can save it as an image. I can publish it to let anyone go to it. And this is my favorite option here, the copy chart. If I do the copy chart option, I can actually paste it into a Google slideshow. And then, let's see, yep. I can paste it into a Google slideshow, and it will give me the option in my Google Slides if I want to link it to that spreadsheet or not. If you do link it, what's awesome is that if the data changes, then when you open up your Google slideshow to that slide, it's going to ask you to update that chart to reflect the live time data in your Google spreadsheet. So again, to do that, it's just like you see on the screen now. I click on my chart, I click that little arrow in the very top right of the chart, and then I would say copy chart. Then you would just paste it into your Google slideshow. So super handy, quick feature. Next, we've got pivot tables that let you analyze information really quickly. I'm going to flip back over to SlideShare because all my little videos that I had aren't loading right for you. So let's go to my student data tab. And I want all of this data here. So to insert my pivot tables, I love pivot tables. I use them all the time. Oops, clicked off of my. I just go to Data, Pivot Table. It's going to create a new sheet down at the bottom. And so for my rows, I want to analyze by information here. Oops. I need A2. I selected the wrong data. Okay. What's it doing? There we go. So I can put, let's see, I want to check my growth for the different subcategories, or we'll look at ethnicity now. And so now it's broken out. These are all of the options that it found in my spreadsheet under my ethnicity column. And so then under values, I can say growth. But I don't want it to add all of their growth together. I want to look at what's the average growth for each of these subcategories here. Or maybe you don't want to do ethnicity. All you have to do then is flip, and let's look at gender, males versus females, average growth. So my males are doing significantly better than my females. And I can see that really fast with a pivot table. So we don't have time to get into all the nitty gritty with a pivot table, but they do play around with them a little bit if you've never used them, because they do make analyzing your data really, really fast. And then you'll also see you can use charts with pivot tables as well. So if I highlight that pivot table data, I can insert my chart right here. So here we go. I can have a chart of my pivot table data. And I could go in and add the title and the axis titles and all that good stuff. But just FYI, all of this cool stuff that you can do to analyze, better understand, and then display that data. So add-ons, I just want to show you one add-on, and I am aware of the time and we are going to be fine to get everything in. So I just want to show you one add-on that is pretty cool. So what are add-ons? If you have never used add-ons before, they essentially add functionality to different Google Drive programs. So Google Docs has add-ons, Google Sheets has add-ons, and Google Forms has add-ons. And they do some pretty powerful things. So if you're trying to use a Google Sheets add-on, you're going to install it. You can be in any Google Sheet. You only need to do it once, and then it'll be there for every Google Sheet that you open after that. And you go up to add-ons at the very top, and then get add-ons. And the one that I want to show you today, there's more in the slideshow that you have access to if you want to explore more things you can do, but we're just going to cover one today. And it is called Copydown. So if you're doing this with me, go open up your Google Sheet and go to Get Add-ons and then search for Copydown. And what Copydown does is copy formulas for new form entries that you submit. So in a Google form, it automatically sets up your spreadsheet. You can add additional columns to that. And I'll actually pull up an example for you because my little video, I'm sure, isn't gonna play for me if we follow suit. So let me get both open here. And in a Google form response spreadsheet, formulas won't automatically copy down for you. So you need this copy down add-on to make that happen. So here we go. And again, the video is in the slideshow for you, so you can watch it if this is too fast. Share the screen. Okay, so here's my form that I set up on the left. It's just a quick 3-question form. Here's the columns that the form set up in my spreadsheet. Then I added these 2 columns, the email address and graduation year, so that I could see those. What my copy down formula does, and then to open it up, all I do is go up to add-ons, copy down settings, and turn it on. And that's all I have to do is turn it on. Then watch what happens. If I say Katie Seamer, I'm a senior, I hit submit, you'll see those responses populate into my spreadsheet. Here they are. And then Copydown is going to run and automatically copy down those formulas, which is my concatenate formula and then my if formula that I have here. So if you're using Google Forms and you need any sort of formulas in that spreadsheet to analyze your data, I definitely recommend getting the Copydown add-on. I also have information about Flubaroo and Autocrat. I knew going into this that we wouldn't have time to look at those, but if you're interested, Flubaroo will grade a Google form for you, and Autocrat will essentially set up a mail merge. So if you need to enter any information collected in a spreadsheet or in a Google form, you can take those bits of information and merge them into a Google Doc. And all that step-by-step info is spelled out there for you in the rest of the slides. So last thing is sharing and protecting the sheet. So you can share in the entire workbook just like you can a Google Doc and give people view or edit rights, but I know I have a lot of people, administrators or teams, and let's say you've got like student data testing information and you need multiple people entering information into this one spreadsheet. It can get kind of wacky, and you can run into some people messing up part of the spreadsheet, accidentally deleting the data, things like that. So Google Sheets, it's really nice. You can share by, again, the entire workbook. You can share by individual sheets. So if you look here, or if you look on yours that you have open, if I would click that sheet tab down at the bottom, the arrow, I can select Protect Sheet. Then it's going to open up this little window, and I want to make sure it says Sheets. I can choose from that little drop down from all of the sheets within my workbook and set permissions. And then I can give individual rights. Can I give individual, if it's view only with everyone, but I want this particular sheet, one person to have edit access to it, I can give those people edit access to just that sheet and view only rights to the rest of the sheet. Same thing beyond the entire sheet. Maybe it's one particular column that you want people to be able to edit and enter information to. So if I select my data, so let's just say it's column D in this example. If I click on D, it'll select that whole column. Then I'm going to right click and choose Protect Range. And then I can name my range if I want. So it could be like air data, air testing or whatever. Then I'll hit Set Permissions. And again, this will look the same as if I shared the whole sheet. But so now I can actually share my entire spreadsheet or my entire workbook as view only, and then just give individual columns edit access to individual people who need access to edit that column. I highly recommend that, especially if you're going to be using Google Sheets for any sort of large data collaboration and collection. That makes it super, super nice. So guys, I'm so sorry that we had a couple of audio glitches, and so that got us off to a little bit of a slow start. I had to speed up through a few of those things a little faster than I would have liked. But you do have access to this recording on our webinar page, and you do have access to the slideshow yourself as well. A couple of just last minute things here to send you on your way. If you want more training about any Google topics, general web tools topics, we do offer a boot camp. We can come to you if you have about 8 to 15 people. If not, you can come to us. The next boot camp we'll be offering starts March 23rd and 24th. The second half of that boot camp, that is a total of a 4-day engagement, would be in April. So you get a month in between to kind of take things back, implement them. I know a lot of times getting a sub for 4 days, especially in a row, can be pretty tough. So we break it up for you. Also available for Ashland credit. You can visit that link right there that you see on the screen, or there's a link in your resources list. And then, of course, we do have our free webinars, just like this one. I promise not to run into that same audio trouble every time for you, but we do offer them the third Wednesday of every month at 4 o'clock Eastern. This month was a little different because Ohio's Educational Technology Conference fell last week, so we couldn't do it last week. But our next one will actually be March 15th, and Michael will be leading that for us on design thinking. So really big topic, lots of cool things about design thinking going on right now. And Michael's going to get us started with 5 tips to start implementing design thinking into your classes on March 15th. So you can sign up for that webinar and access all of today's resources at forward-edge.net/webinars. And before you head out, if you have any questions, let me know. And you are also eligible to receive a contact hour for attending. So just make sure that you fill out that quiz there. You do have to get an 80% in order to get it right, but you guys shouldn't have any trouble with that. You can take it as many times as you want. And that's really it, guys. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to submit. I'll stick around for just another minute to make sure everybody got their questions out. All right, and I'm looking at some of the Q&A just while some of you are kind of awesome. Good. I'm glad it was helpful, Jason. I'm looking at some of the things that were asked in the Q&A, and I'll just share them with the group in case anyone else had those questions. But can you make text align vertically in Google sideways? And the answer is yes, you absolutely can. You can tilt, rotate, stack, or choose the angle, and it's just under Format, Text Rotation. You are welcome, Michael. Thanks for joining us. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast in 1 minute. I think it's going to boot you out when I do that. So if you wanted to grab any of the links in that resource widget area, or you need anything at all, please go ahead and do that now so you don't get booted out expecting to have pulled something up. All right, I'm going to go ahead and kick it out. Just remember, if you do need the link to the slideshow, anything at all, contact our quiz. You can get it on our website at forward-edge.net/webinars. Guys, thank you so much for attending. I enjoyed spending my Wednesday afternoon with you. Make it a great rest of the week.